Hello everybody. If you want to read all the stories in full, please go to www.steveuk.blog. Thank you. This upper advanced story is for everyone, but more particularly for one unique user on freefortalk.com. You know who you are. Short story 500. The Flesh Weaver. Upper Advanced. In the fog-shrouded town of Greyhaven, where cliffs jutted like broken teeth against the sea, the derelict textile factory stood as a decaying relic of a forgotten era. Once alive with the rhythmic clatter of looms, it now lay silent, its halls haunted by tales of workers who vanished decades ago. Locals whispered of a weaver, not of cloth, but of flesh, a malevolent force that consumed lives in its insatiable hunger. Elena, a journalist with an unrelenting thirst for hidden truths, arrived to unravel the mystery. The villagers' warnings, heavy and dread, only sharpened her resolve. She dismissed their fear as mere superstition, her ambition blinding her to the terror lurking within. The factory's interior was a labyrinth of decay. Dust hung thick, a sickly veil mingling with the stench of copper, rot, and something primal that clawed at her senses. Elena's flashlight flickered, casting jagged shadows across rusted machinery, splintered beams, and floors littered with debris, tattered threads, corroded buttons, and fragments that looked disturbingly like bones, brittle and stained with dark, unnameable smears. A rhythmic clack echoed from the depths, a pulsing heartbeat that drew her deeper. Her pulse raced, her curiosity a tightening noose, urging her toward the factory's core, despite the growing dread in her gut. There she found an ancient loom, its frame gnarled like twisted bones, its threads glistening crimson, throbbing as if alive. The fabric it wove was grotesque, veined and pulsing, emanating a heat that made her skin crawl. The air was thick with the reek of blood and decay, a miasma that choked her lungs. Mesmerized, she reached out, her fingers brushing the fabric. It was warm, slick, writhing like living flesh. A needle snapped forward, piercing her fingertip. Her blood dripped onto the threads, which glowed brighter, drinking it greedily. Pain seared through her, rooting her in place. The loom's hum deepened into a guttural chant, vibrating in her bones, resonating with a malevolence that felt ancient and alive. Threads slithered up her arm, burrowing into her flesh like parasitic worms, stitching through veins, muscles, and tendons. She screamed, clawing at her skin, but the threads multiplied, weaving deeper, tearing through her body. Blood poured from her wounds, pooling on the floor in intricate patterns that mirrored the loom's cursed design. Shadows stirred, figures emerged, their bodies unraveled into grotesque tapestries. The missing workers, their faces hollowed, limbs stretched into threads, stared with eyes still alive with terror, pleading and accusing. The loom was no machine, it was a predator, feeding on lives to craft its eternal fabric. Elena fought, her nails ripping flesh, but the threads pierced her heart, her lungs, her eyes. Her screams became wet gurgles as the loom unraveled her, stitching her in essence into its tapestry. She felt her memories, her fears, her very soul torn apart, woven into an internal pattern of agony. Her final vision was her own face, trapped in the fabric, mouth open in a scream that would echo forever. Weeks later, the factory was silent. Elena's camera, notes, and bag lay scattered in the dust, her existence erased. The villagers, bound by fear, never searched for her. They knew the weaver's hunger, its need to feed its ceaseless craft. Years later, another journalist, Michael, arrived, lured by the same dark rumors. He found the loom, its tapestry now vast, intricate, with Elena's face among countless others. her eyes wide with unending torment. The loom clacked to life, its needles gleaming with hunger. The fog thickened outside, muffling his screams as the weaver claimed another soul. Its appetite was insatiable, its fabric growing ever larger, a grotesque monument to eternal suffering woven from the lives it devoured. Vocabulary notes. Derelict, adjective, definition, in a very poor condition due to disuse or neglect. Example, in the fog-shrouded town of Greyhaven, where cliffs jutted like broken teeth against the sea, the derelict textile factory stood as a decaying relic of a forgotten era. Context describes the abandoned, decaying state of the factory, setting a grim tone. Similar words: abandoned, dilapidated, forsaken, run down, neglected. Example sentence with similar word. The dilapidated warehouse was a haunting reminder of the town's lost industry. Malevolent, adjective, definition, having or showing a wish to do evil or cause harm to others. Example, locals whispered of a weaver, not of cloth, but of flesh, a malevolent force that consumed lives. Context emphasizes the evil nature of the weaver, heightening the horror. Similar words: malicious, sinister, wicked, evil, baleful. Example sentence with similar word. The sinister presence in the cave seemed to watch their every move. Gnarled, adjective, definition, twisted, knotted or rough, especially with age or from hard use. Example, there she found an ancient loom, its frame gnarled like twisted bones, its threads glistening crimson. Context described the loom's twisted, eerie appearance, likening it to bones for a gruesome effect. Similar words: knotted, twisted, contorted, warped, rugged. Example sentence with similar word. The contorted branches of the old tree cast eerie shadows on the ground. Miasma, noun, definition, an unpleasant or unhealthy smell or atmosphere, often associated with decay. Example, the air was thick with the reek of blood and decay, a miasma that choked her lungs. Context enhances the sensory horror by describing the foul atmosphere in the factory. Similar words: stench, reek, fetor, stink, foulness. Example sentence with similar word. The fetor of rotting leaves filled the swamp, making it hard to breathe. Insatiable, adjective, definition, impossible to satisfy, having an unquenchable desire or appetite. Example, its appetite was insatiable, its fabric growing ever larger, a grotesque monument to eternal suffering. Context highlights the weaver's endless hunger, reinforcing the horrific ending. Similar words: unquenchable, voracious, ravenous, unappeasable, greedy. Example sentence with similar word. The ravenous beast devoured everything in its path, never satisfied. Throbbing, adjective, verb, definition, beating or pulsing with a strong regular rhythm, often painfully. Example, the fabric it wove was grotesque, veined and throbbing, emanating a heat that made her skin crawl. Context describes the living, pulsing quality of the fabric, adding to the visceral horror. Similar words: pulsing, pulsating, beating, vibrating, pounding. Example sentence with similar word. Her head was pounding with pain after the loud explosion. Unraveled, verb, definition, to undo or come apart, especially when woven or knitted, metaphorically to break down or disintegrate. Example, her screams became wet gurgles as the loom unraveled her, stitching her essence into its tapestry. Context describes the horrific process of Elena being torn apart and woven into the loom's fabric. Similar words: undone, unwoven, disintegrated, dismantled, broken apart. Example sentence with similar word. The old sweater disintegrated after years of wear, falling apart in her hands. Story written by Grok 3 AI. Image created by Grok 3 AI. To read all the stories in full, please go to www.steveuk.blog. Thank you.